Hello there. My name's Chris. How are you? Nice to see you. I'm not seeing you, but you're seeing me, I hope. Welcome to this live stream brought to you by Gravity Blankets. We'll talk a little bit about Gravity Blankets in a little while. I'm not wearing the Gravity robe this time, but glad to be here. Glad to have you here. Some of you on the East Coast are about to undergo a snowstorm, and I'm sorry for that. But I assume nobody was really going outside anyway, so I guess you'll just have to deal. Dave Hewitt says, I am seeing you, producer Dave. A lot of people saying hello. Brad says, no echo chamber. Yay. Glad to be here. Boomer says, hashtag winning. Michael Mogard says, Mr. Christopher Harris. What is going on, sir? What is going on? Your hat is awesome. I dig the Harris football step and repeat. How's the Drew says, how's the possum doing? 1 to 10. He's holding up fingers. He's holding up paws. 7. I think he's a 7. He's all right. I think he's doing okay. 7 seems good in these modern times. Thank you all for coming. Andrew says, is Chase Volume here? He's not. He's a ghost. He's mystery. It's tough. It's tough to find old Chase. Jordan says, thanks for taking time out of your day to speak with us once again. Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. I figure for the playoffs, feels like a time to, on the one hand, see if we can offer some advice that will help, with the playoff games. And on the other hand, some of us, myself included, you get crash out of some leagues and you just want to hang out and commiserate. And there's probably not that much going on a Tuesday night, many places. So happy to be here. Very fun to chat with you all. Nice hat. Thank you. Although you meant metaphorically, but that is the Cornell hat. This is my workout hat. I am, what would be the word? Disgusting right now. I did throw on a clean shirt. I didn't work out in this, but my Prison Stripes shirt. But yeah, underneath I need a shower because I just did the stairs in the yacht. And yeah, here we go. Somebody said found Waldo. It sort of is sort of a where's Waldo shirt. Thomas says, does the possum have 10 fingers? Oh, it's a good point. He might have been 7 out of 8. That is a good point. Sergio says, almost a year of COVID brain. How are you holding up? I'm okay. I mean, at this point, it's sort of like, what's the right way to say it? I don't mean to compare what going through the fantasy season is like to what the country's going through. It's not a fair comparison, but from my own personal, being tired and ready for something to stop, it feels pretty similar. It's not as serious, obviously, but it feels pretty similar. I just am, I'm tired. I have 8 podcasts left, but who's counting? It's been a really fun time, but it's also been a hard time, and I'm kind of ready for it to be over, but I'm okay. Relatively speaking, I am okay. Univ Poke says, thoughts on Lynn Bowden? So Scott Fish was on the podcast today, and that was a surprise because, it wasn't a surprise that Scott was on the podcast because I asked him, but it was a surprise that we counted down on our 5 favorite waiver ads of the week, and Lynn Bowden was his number 1, which clearly it's because he expects everybody else to be hurt for this game against the Patriots, but that was kind of a surprise to me. My thoughts are, not probably ready to be a fantasy weapon. He didn't make my top 5. He didn't make my honorable mentions for a waiver ad, but I understand the logic in the very short term. If there's no Parker, there won't be any Preston Williams, no Gesicki, none of the running backs. I can see the notion that maybe there's just a lot of volume to chase with Lynn Bowden. He seems like okay. He's a little small. You can understand why he's not a quarterback prospect because he's just too small, probably. He's not Kyler Murray level fast, so he can't get away with it. And probably just a guy, but maybe at some point a fun sort of slash kind of slot receiver type weapon. Clearly, the Raiders are the ones who drafted him high and didn't fall in love with what they saw because they got rid of him to trade him to the Dolphins. But doesn't mean that he can't be good for a second team, of course. ZL says, keeper talk. I'm happy to talk keepers. Obviously, to to some degree, we don't, there's so much that's going to change. But hey, man, if I'm allowed to make a video where I'm counting down 12 through 1 for the first round for next year and expect you to watch it and take it seriously, I think I should be able to handle some keeper questions. So that's fine too. I may wind up saying, boy, a lot of things might change, but I'm willing to, I'm happy to do it. Adam says, longtime podcast listener, happy to catch your YouTube live. I appreciate you. Thanks, Adam. Dave says, turns out possums do have 5 fingers per paw. I did not know this. So, I mean, all I can tell you is he's got 4 per paw. So something happened. As you may recall, the backstory on the possum involves possum water vodka and some pretty tough guys with his distillery in Kentucky, which has now gone under, where he was in debt. And so maybe some of his fingers got lost that way. It is possible. Trust the Shooter says, buddy. AC Jazz says, is Jalen Hurts that good? So I ranked him pretty high. Like my preliminary ranks for week 15 are up, and Hurts is in the QB1 ranks for me. He is. But that's fantasy, right? I mean, he has the thing. He has the cheat code. So if they're really going to be running so much option in there and he's going to keep it double-digit times, it's just he has a floor that makes it a lot more palatable to me than Ryan Tannehill, who could be awesome. It's an easy matchup. I don't know why I'm picking on Tannehill, but like it could go great. But when they're not runners and you're a big favorite against Detroit, maybe a Stafford-less Detroit, and they decide they're going to throw it 11 times, the floor goes away. Whereas with Hurts, it feels like if he's going to run like that, of course, it was one game, but the running worked. So I would think they're going to try to do it against Arizona. It seems like for fantasy is pretty usable, pretty addable for your waivers tonight and pretty usable. But if the question is about him as a football player, the jury isn't just out. The jury hasn't even been selected. It's way, way too early. As a thrower, he didn't really show much. Mostly the good stuff that he did was when his offensive line pooped the bed, which they've done all year, and let free runners. He didn't just take the hit or throw an interception like Carson Wentz. Instead, he got out of there and at least made a 0-yard play instead of a huge negative play. But long way to go. Long way to go for Jalen Hurts as a football player. Vicente says, you hurt my feelings about Derek Carr weekly. I'm sorry. I don't think he's that good. I don't think he's that bad. I think he's about the worst you can be and still be like a championship contender if everything else is amazing around him. And it's not yet, right? So my feeling about Carr is probably the Raiders need another quarterback at some point. They probably won't do it, I'm going to guess, but yeah, I'm not a big fan. Gregory says, Chase volume always blows up in week 17. It's so annoying, right? Poppy Zone says, Leonard Fournette. Is it Fournette time? And it sounds like I didn't rate Ronald Jones because he had that Chris Godwin pinky surgery. Seems like your pinky is necessary for your ball carrying needs. So I didn't rank Fournette aggressively. I'll put it that way. It's interesting, like the Falcons defense keeps getting picked on in Roto-World blurbs, and people keep thinking they're just an elite matchup to play against, and they're not the worst defense to play against, but they're not good. They're pretty good. I mean, they're not good to play against. They're actually have played very well for the better part of, almost 2 months now, certainly a month and a half. It's not a super easy matchup, and I'm not positive that we won't get a trick from LaShawn McCoy, Keyshawn Vaughn. I don't know whether Fournette, it would be difficult for me to treat him like Ronald Jones because I don't think he's as good. And it's difficult for me to lose a fantasy playoff game because I sat someone real and played Leonard Fournette. But if you are like, listen, man, I'm choosing between Leonard Fournette and Todd Gurley. Like, well, dude, of course, play Leonard Fournette. My God, right? But they're I don't want to be sitting Josh Jacobs for him because I'm worried the Chargers, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want to go crazy. But yeah, seems like it's got a chance. It's got a chance for sure. Nick says, if the rumor Kenny Golladay miraculously plays, might you flex him over Zeke? Yes. The question was over Zeke Elliott, and the answer was any excuse not to use Zeke Elliott. The answer would be yes. Juice says, how many possums does it take to tackle a muscle hamster? He says he could do it by himself, but I think we're pretty clear that's not true. Let me see. Ilya says, why do you believe Frank Gore is not a Hall of Fame running back? So I'll just say, first of all, I couldn't care less about the Hall of Fame. I seriously could not care less. And Hall of Fame arguments are like, that's the ultimate in like Bill Simmons, just sort of, I feel like staring at my own sphincter for a half an hour, like I don't care about the Hall of Fame, and debates about it make me sad. Frank Gore is a compiler. He was a very good player. But he's got all these career numbers because he was around a really long time getting 800 yards a year. Like, I just don't think there's never been a time where you've ever been close to saying Frank Gore was the best running back in the league, and maybe never a top 5 running back in the league. In his early Niners days, he was hurt. When he got healthy, he was very good for them, but I just don't think he was transcendently special. And I acknowledge that running career yardage numbers are only going to go down, but I think that's partly because they're all going to get hurt, and he didn't, right? It seems like he was a good player, and his chief advocacy for his candidacy is he didn't get a career-ending injury. So it doesn't make me excited, but I don't care. I really don't. David says, speaking of keepers, where do you think Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins will go in drafts next year? Obviously, the caveats are so much depends on how the rest of this season goes, and so much depends on how the playoffs go. And, people are going to, like decide that someone looks like Alex Collins from a couple years ago, and he's a second round pick all of a sudden, right? But I like these particular 2 players that you asked about more than I ever liked Alex Collins. Obviously, at this point, I would value Dobbins more than Taylor. At this point, I would value Swift more than Taylor. At this point, maybe Akers and Taylor might be close. But I have no idea what the market's going to say. I can imagine them being second and third round picks. Sure, I can. It's going to be interesting because it seems to me there's a lot of running backs, and none of them are sure things, and they're all going to come with platoon mates and annoyances and questions about quarterbacks and questions about offensive lines. But more so than probably a few years ago, maybe even like 2 years ago, there's an influx of young running backs where you can see things going right. It doesn't mean they will, which is why we're probably not going to take them in the first round. But Josh said it on the podcast last Friday, like a lot of leagues could wind up getting one in second and third rounds with guys who will produce like first rounders. But the tough part is it's going to be really hard to know which ones it is, because they're all going to have pretty immense risk factors. Like the risk factor with J.K. Dobbins is Lamar Jackson scores a lot of touchdowns. And what if Gus Edwards is still there? I'm going to guess Mark Ingram won't be there. What if they don't fix the offensive line, which hasn't played very well lately? The left tackle's out, so I think we can make some excuses. What if in general that Ravens offense doesn't look like it looked in 2019? Instead, it looks like it's looked in 2020, which, last night notwithstanding, they scored a lot of points, but it's still not really a complete functional offense unless Lamar Jackson decides to run for 150 yards, and that doesn't benefit J.K. Dobbins. And someone like Jonathan Taylor, do we think that, is Naheem Hines still going to be there? Who's the quarterback? Is it really going to be Rivers? Is he good? Did he, I was told for 3 months he was terrible at football. I'm pretty sure people told me he was actually actively terrible. Harris, you're an idiot. I've been watching him. He's terrible at football. And now he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So there's risk factors with everybody, but I'm going to be interested in them. I for sure am. Dan says, a Superflex PPR semifinal question: Gardner Minshew or T.Y. Hilton? I think you play the quarterback. I think that's why Superflex is what it is. I definitely understand it. The good part is that the Ravens defense isn't what it was. They probably will squash Jacksonville, but they're not unimpeachable. They're not unscorable on. Everyone's been scoring on them, kind of. I probably just go, a bad day for a quarterback well. I mean, a bad day for a quarterback is Cam Newton getting benched in the third quarter, right? We hope that doesn't happen. But normally, if they make it through an entire game, even if they're losing big and they don't get hurt and they don't get benched, a bad game for quarterbacks, 12 points, and we're really mad, which is why we play quarterbacks at Superflex. But of course, I don't know what's going to happen. I think I play the quarterback though. So let's see. Let me have a drink of possum water vodka. And let me actually put a word in. We have 209 of my closest friends here. First of all, I'd love for you to like the video. We have 39 likes. So if you're watching on mobile, all you have to do is close the chat, and then you'll see a like button. Hit the like. So I'd love to get to at least 120 likes right away. And in the meantime, I'm going to give you a word from the sponsor, which I have to pick up. I'm way over here now. Oy. The reason I said oi is because this is Gravity Blanket. And they're sponsoring this live stream. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here right now, because that's how the channel happens. We have sponsors, and this thing is kind of heavy. This is like a 15-pound, 20-pound blanket. That's 15 pounds, I think. They have heavier ones too. It's like filled. You can feel what it's filled with. It's filled with sort of like, it's very comfortable and soft, but way inside there's like beanbaggy material to make it heavy. And the notion behind Gravity Blankets is that they're made for people who have sleeping troubles. So if you have insomnia, or you just have a hard time falling asleep, or a hard time staying asleep once you wake up, you might want to try a Gravity Blanket. It's actual like science. They hired a sleep lab to do tests on people to see whether they sleep better with pressure points being hit. And that's the idea behind it. Basically, this is why people swaddle babies, because it actually physically creates comfort. Your body, the pressure points in your body actually tell you to go to sleep. So it's very relaxing to be under it, and it's very relaxing to sleep under it. And so if you've tried everything sleep-wise and you have a really rough time, rather than another, pill that you take or another, all that stuff, try a weighted blanket. This is the only weighted blanket on the market that's actually been tested. And it's, I think they said like 86% of the people who've bought one would recommend it to somebody else. We've got a link in the show notes here. I think it's gravityblankets.com, either /HarrisTube or promo code HarrisTube. I forget which, but you should be able to figure it out. They're giving 25% off right now. So very, very good deal. We thank them for sponsoring. They've been sponsoring the podcast a little bit lately and the YouTube channel a lot. And we'd love it. If you're interested, if you do have sleep troubles, we'd love it if you check it out. I have slept with this thing, and it's a different experience because I often like very light covers, but if I'm having a hard time sleeping, I'll put this on top of my light covers, and it's not like sweaty or anything like that. And it actually does help. So Gravity Blankets, thank you for sponsoring. I will place that there. We've gotten way above my like requirement, which I very much appreciate. So let's do some more of your questions. For anybody who's just joining, hey man, I'm just hanging out, or lady, I'm just hanging out. It seems like it would be fun time. We can talk about waivers, because if you're in your semifinals, waiver claims, I assume a lot of leagues are tonight, which I've done a waiver video, but I'm happy to kind of delve into it a little bit, or you could ask about other names that I maybe didn't talk about. If you want to ask about lineup questions for this week, I do have ranks now. They're at harrisfootball.com. Or if you just want to talk about like keepers or dynasty or non-football, whatever you want to talk about, just hanging out. Should be kind of fun. 229 of my closest friends. So let's see. A little flexual healing needed, says Windfish. Jeff Wilson or Deonte Johnson? Ugh. That's a hard one. That's a really tough one. I mean, I changed from the video on Monday night, the waiver video that I did for the YouTube channel. I changed. I had number one, Jalen Hurts, number two, Jeff Wilson, and who cares? Because if your need for them probably is not the same on different teams, right? Someone needs a quarterback, someone else needs a running back. But I actually, because of Raheem Mostert's MRI in his ankle, and not knowing whether A, he misses the game, or B, if it's just he's limited in the game, this week against the Cowboys, it's such a good matchup. I changed it so that Jeff Wilson was my number one ad on the podcast today. I wish I could tell you what the punishment long-term is for Deonte Johnson for his drops. It was disaster in a terrible spot. killed a team of mine on Sunday night. And I don't have that information beyond what anybody else would know. It's obvious that to start Deonte Johnson, you're embracing a lot more risk than you were a week ago, because there just is let's say there's no extra punishment. Let's say they spend the entire week giving him hugs, swaddling him with the gravity blanket, and then he goes into the Bengals game Monday night and drops his first pass. Like, there's a risk that he's just gone. Right. So you're having to embrace that risk. But of course, there's also the risk that there's also the chance that he rises to the occasion and performs great. And they give him 12 targets, which they've done, times. They've given him double-digit targets, and he performs wonderfully. So much more than previously, Deontay Johnson has floor that is very uncomfortable. But so does Jeff Wilson. Is not awesome. If it were me, I think if Raheem Mostert doesn't play, I think I could get around to Jeff Wilson, because I'll wind up hiking in my ranks. Right now, I have Mostert higher. If Mostert plays, I think I'd probably play Deontay Johnson. But if you didn't, and anybody out there who's thinking about using Deontay Johnson, and you just were like, listen, I just went through it, I survived it, I'm not playing that again. Let him prove it to me for 1 week, and then I'll talk to him in the finals. 100% get it. Of course I get it, right? It's crazy to feel like, oh, great, now I'm going to do this again. And he's going to drop a ball, and then I'm going to get 0 points out of him. Like, I can see how that could happen. David says treats anxiety, and they are toasty. They are great. Yeah, the gravity blankets. Thank you very much. David also asks, in Dynasty, Robbie Anderson or Deonte Johnson? I think that's pretty clearly Deonte Johnson for next year. I'm going to have Deonte Johnson ahead of Robbie Anderson. Anderson's been an amazing story. Amazing that Adam Gase let him go, and it turns out he can do way more than Adam Gase ever asked of him. I'll just say, so I was on Robbie Anderson. We did videos about him this summer that we thought he was a sleeper. I never thought it would be like this. Don't get me wrong. I think this is way more than I ever would have expected, but I don't think his body type is great for the role that he's inhabiting. He was awesome after the catch against the Broncos. 4-yard catches and run 15 yards. I'll tell you what, a little string bean guy is so skinny with tiny little shoulder pads. That's a great way to get concussed, to separate your shoulder, to I'm not, it's impossible to predict injury, but it feels like this year might have been kind of lightning in a bottle. And going forward, I just think Deontay Johnson's like a truly special player, an incredibly elusive route runner, incredibly elusive with the ball in his hands, really coordinated. The problem was getting the ball in his hands, but that's the only problem. I assume Juju is gone from Pittsburgh. He's a free agent. I assume the top two are Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. They're a nice complement to each other. I think I'm going to, just if you're talking about next year, Deontay. Jet says, does the possum use the blanket? When he remembers to go to the bathroom before he goes to bed, he sometimes is allowed to. Rippin' Lips says, just have your old lady give you an old fashioned. That's a drink. I don't know what you're talking about. Justin says, Kareem Hunt or Deontay Johnson? Dave Hewitt, I know you're watching. It's time. We know who our guy is. Deontay Johnson is our guy for the thumbnail. Kareem Hunt or Deontay Johnson in a non-PPR for this. I assume you're asking for this week for a flex type question. And everything that I'm saying about Johnson applies. And what we were just comparing him to Jeff Wilson, and probably Wilson is in exactly the same neighborhood as Kareem Hunt would be. I think Hunt had an amazing game last night. That was awesome. And he carried a lot of teams if you stuck by him, but it obviously had been pretty bad for a few weeks because Nick Chubb is better and going to get more work, and Kareem Hunt's going to play a third of the snaps. And there are going to be some times when that translates into awesome production and touchdowns and good stuff. And there are going to be some times where we've seen it lately. It just hasn't. So there's floor with Hunt, like there's going to be floor with Wilson. I'm making the comparison to Deontay. I feel like it's the same. If Nick Chubb weren't going to play, I'd play Kareem Hunt. Since I know Nick Chubb's in there, I would tend to err on the side of Johnson, but I'm fine if you just don't want to play the game with anybody who's thinking of Deontay Johnson. And a lot of you probably are, because we've talked about him so much on the channel and we really like him. It's fine. If you have a viable option and you just don't want to play it, it's fine. I say this a lot, and my lineup advice gets to be kind of one note, but especially when we get down to, I have to win this week, and if I don't, I'm going to feel real bad because my season is over, which is how we all feel when the fantasy playoffs end for us. I think the question you have to ask yourself is, which one is going to tick you off more? I'm sorry that I repeat myself. I say that a lot, but which one is going to tick you off more? Trusting Deontay again and having him drop a ball and you knew it, you shouldn't have trusted him, or having him on your bench and he goes for 3 touchdowns and 130 yards because he can, because he's really good when he catches the ball. I think only you can answer that question about which one would tick you off more, and I think that's your answer. Managing your own fantasy football emotions. Dave says, I'm photoshopping Deonte Johnson now. So if you have a single position question, I see some single position questions. I'm probably not going to answer for this week, running back or that running back. It's really easy. Just type in harrisfootball.com while I'm talking to you, and you'll see my ranks. If you have a flex question, I'll do my best. Sometimes I don't know, but let's keep going. Let's keep going. Jason says, I will have the number 9 pick in a dynasty league in 2021. And I assume that means a rookie pick. Is it too late to pick? Is that too late to pick an impact quarterback? I need one with Carr and Matty Melt as my only options. Well, I'll just say immediately that I have watched exactly 0 quarters of college football. Exactly 0. To be honest, college football has kind of made me queasy this year. It hasn't felt like I've wanted to watch the kids in the stands. It hasn't felt like I've wanted to watch these unpaid athletes being told for the good of their billion-dollar programs they should go out there. So I've kind of just stayed away. So I don't know very much about this class. My guess will be among rookies, you could probably get a quarterback. I just don't know which one, but I know it's supposed to be a very, very good wide receiver class, and there are definitely a few running backs who look good as well. It won't shock me if number 9 you get a quarterback. You might actually feel like you have a tough choice between a quarterback, maybe Fields or someone like that, versus a pretty good wide receiver prospect who landed in a good spot, who you just think, I'm going to guess there's a chance. I'm going to guess there's a chance you get a quarterback there. A couple of Terry Mclaurin questions, which I totally understand. Mug Def says, can we trust Terry? J-Rod, what's going on, J-Rod? How are you? Says, standard flex, Mclaurin or Miles Sanders. Yikes. So that specific question is hard. And then Mug Def's question is also very hard, trusting Terry Mclaurin after it's been, weeks now. It's been a couple of weeks of just awful performance. I'll say the Mclaurin question gets decided for you if it's Dwayne Haskins. You just don't bother, right? Why would we do that to ourselves? It can work, but he's terrible. So if Alex Smith can't play, decision made. I would be able to live with it if Mclaurin went crazy and it was Dwayne Haskins. It would be sad, but I'd be able to live with it. It sounds like they're preparing us for Alex Smith to be able to play against Seattle. It's a newly resurgent defense that isn't nearly as bad as it was 2 months ago, but it's still, Terry McLaurin's a really good player. And I don't know anything that you guys don't know when it comes to McLaurin. Like, I don't see anything happening as I'm watching games to say, that's why McLaurin isn't getting the ball, isn't making play. The reason he didn't get the ball in the second half is because it's Dwayne Haskins, and they're a terrible offense, and they scored all their points on defense, and it's not surprising. Why in the previous game and a half wasn't McLaurin getting the ball? Boy, oh boy, I do not know the answer to that question. I don't. Of course, hundreds and hundreds of times in our lives playing fantasy football, we've had a really, really good receiver, a wide receiver 1, have 2 bad weeks in a row, and have had people going, Julio Jones is done and stinks. Devontae Adams can't get it done anymore. What's wrong with Michael Thomas? We usually, when it's a receiver that we really trust and we think is really good, we just ride it out and we go, yeah, I'm just going to live and die with this guy. It's the fantasy semifinals. And not a great quarterback situation and not a real aggressive quarterback who particularly wants to go down the field. So, if McLaurin's going to have a good day, it's going to have to be with a bunch of short intermediate things where he has run after catch or he catches a touchdown. But he's a really good player. So, the real answer is I have no more information than you do about whether Terry McLaurin's trustable. Again, it's probably going to come down to that question that I always ask about, does it make you mad if he's on the bench and he goes off, or does it make you mad if he flops again for the third week in a row? In J-Rod's comparison with someone like Miles Sanders, I was ranking the running backs today, and I'm like, come on, can't you get excited about Miles Sanders? Come on, Arizona's defense isn't great. He made a big play. He can do that again. Come on. And I just couldn't. I couldn't make myself put Miles Sanders at number 8 or whatever. And I can't remember where I put him, but it was probably like 18, 20, something like that, because other than the one play, it kind of looked like it usually looks, where, not blaming him, that offensive line just is all hurt and injured and whatever. So the difference between someone like Sanders right now or hot running back du jour that you might be comparing to someone like Terry McLaurin is that recency bias tells me, oh my God, that guy just did good. I bet he's going to do good again. And he might. And he's had a lot of games where he's been just totally awful. And so it's like, do we punish McLaurin because his awful games came right now? I wish I could answer that question. I wish I could. I'd be in Vegas. Just very, very difficult to know. At any point in the last month, when I was ranking Terry McLaurin like 8 among receivers or 11 among receivers, I would have told you, come on, what are we doing? Comparing him to Miles Sanders, who's trapped in a loveless marriage, who's terrible, or whatever, name your running back. It doesn't feel so easy now. It's tough. It is a tough question for sure. Diego says, I have a champagne flex problem for a semifinal game, Michael Thomas or a Dobbins or Swift combination. For me, the answer is Drew Brees. For me, if Drew Brees plays, just play Michael Thomas. If he doesn't, it's fine to not use him. At this point, I don't know anything that anybody else doesn't know. I don't know if Brees is going to play. I ranked him as though he were, but that could be wrong. Feels like if you want the number 1 seed, you should get Drew Brees in there. But it's a tough game anyway, and maybe they don't care about the number 1 seed. And so maybe Taysom Hill plays again. And certainly Michael Thomas produced some numbers against the Saints, but it was kind of like furious comeback mode, and it was sort of slow for a lot of it. And I don't like Taysom Hill as a quarterback, so it feels like it would be pretty easy to take the better of those 2 running backs. Jay Burzez says, I'm grabbing my sack and rolling with scary Terry McLaurin. Players make plays. I like the confidence. And I think talent I feel very confident that talent in the long sweep of history takes over, and we're usually right. If we get it right that they're good, the noise gets weeded out, and Terry McLaurin, I think, is good and therefore becomes a good player over the long sweep of history. But unfortunately, we don't get to play fantasy. If you play in a rotisserie style fantasy football league, you get to kind of see the long sweep of history and you don't worry too much about it. But most of us don't. And it is tough to make that. It's tough to pull that trigger. So I admire the grabbing of the parts. We have 263 people watching right now, which I appreciate very much. Hi. I would love it if you would like this video. Can we get to 200 likes right now? That would be so nice if you would do that. So nice. And if you don't see the like button and you're on mobile, just close the chat window and you'll see a little like button, hit the like, and then boom. Wow, we just jumped up to 181 and 189 and 195. So close. So close. 202. We did it. Thank you very much. I saw a good question and I just lost it because the interface is kind of bad. Han Song says, have you talked about Justin Jefferson yet? What was up with Minnesota's pass offense? Yeah, Justin Jefferson in and of himself is a really terrific prospect. He came into the league polished. He can't, my comparison for him, I think in the almanac was Keenan Allen, and I think it stands up. I think he's that kind of route runner. He just is smooth. You watch him play, he doesn't look like Jerry Jeudy. He's not, his limbs aren't flailing all over the place. He's not dropping the ball. He's not giving up on routes. He just came into the league looking like a pro on film. So very, very pro Justin Jefferson. As to what happened against Tampa, it's what's tough about it is it was kind of the exact opposite of that. Was like an opposite type game. I talked about it a little bit with Jim McCormick on the podcast on Monday. It's like Tampa blitzes more than any team in the league, except in that game they didn't blitz very much at all. It's like Tampa stops the run really, really well, often because they're blitzing, often because it's run blitzes. They're just throwing a bunch of guys to the line of scrimmage, and Minnesota saw they weren't doing it, so they ran. And Dalvin Cook had a really terrific day. And then, there were times where Tampa Bay got pressure with 4, and Kirk Cousins didn't deal with it well, and threw, missed open guys, missed an easy screen, missed Adam Thielen for a long one on the sideline that Jim mentioned. The analysis that I gave beforehand was just wrong. Hey, here's this team that's let a lot of quarterbacks, this defense that's let a lot of quarterbacks have huge games. Kirk Cousins has been playing really well. Why can't it go that way? And it went almost exactly the opposite. And it is difficult. It's difficult to understand. I mean, the Bears are a different kind of defense for this matchup. It would be really tough for me to get away from using Justin Jefferson. And you just, if you go down with a good player who's part of the reason why you got there, to be honest. Tom says, are Gurley and Gaskin both droppable at this point? Obviously, it depends on what you're dropping them for. It's the semifinals, so I have to assume that whoever you're dropping them for, you need, like, right now, I need to make sure I get that guy. Otherwise, I don't know that I need to make a major transaction, because what if, I don't want to start either one. I mean, Gaskin, I am assuming to this point isn't going to play, but because of COVID, but maybe he will. I don't know. But what if we get some massive statement by Todd Gurley unexpectedly against Tampa Bay in the worst possible situation, and suddenly week 16 you're like, I really wish I hadn't dropped that guy. It's really true for most anybody. I don't expect it to be the case, and if you have a need, it's fine with me. It comes down to your own individual case, but it's fine with me. It's fine. Obviously, I have no idea if Gaskin's going to play, because that's entirely about his diagnosis. What do we got? Chad says, how badly do you think teams misevaluated the receiver class? That's a really good question. Versus the rookies just doing better or worse based on their team situation. Well, I mean, the wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed answer, that's a really excellent question, is probably, and who, I am not the rookie guy. I'm just not the pre-draft rookie guy. I've now watched them for a year, so I feel like I know what they are this year, but the mealy-mouthed answer is like, they need more time. It's just impossible to really know in this weird year where Jerry Jeudy had a wide receiver playing quarterback one game, there's a lot of excuses available. If we were going to redo the draft right now, you're going to tell me that Henry Ruggs is still the first rookie receiver taken? I'm going to guess not, which isn't to say he can't work out, but I think given what Justin Jefferson did, and given what Brandon Ayuk has done, and I don't know, I think maybe you'd get a reshuffling a little bit. Maybe not Lamb, because Lamb was looking pretty great when Dak Prescott was in there. But Jeudy and Ruggs, the Alabama kids, I don't know. I'm not saying they're doomed. I'm not saying anything bad about that program. I'm not saying, but based on what they did this year, neither one has looked ready, which is not the way you would have expected it to go. So the draft is just hard anyway to know anything beforehand. Everybody's so sure, and we're always so wrong. It's pretty rare when everybody goes, Mitch Trubisky, come on, and then it turns out to be right. That one we can second guess, but a lot of, most people liked Ruggs fine. Most people like Jeudy fine. Most people like Lamb fine. So I'll I'll defer a little bit, but I think right now, if you were going to do the draft, you'd have to consider the rookie year the most important piece of evidence, and a player like Jefferson would almost have to be the first dude, right? Love the question. What's your Marcus says, what's your confidence level in Jarvis Landry this week? I mean, it's okay. It's wide receiver 3 style confidence, probably. I would guess something like that, because Mayfield's played great 2 weeks in a row. Does that mean that he's great? I mean, he sure didn't play great before that. So it's hard for me to say I'm positive Baker Mayfield's going to be good every single week. But Landry's been awfully good. He seems healthy. A lot of his bad production earlier in the year, we could probably chalk up to the hip injury. Giants defense played well. I think I trust him in the level of like wide receiver 3, and you can see where I have him in the ranks. Let's do another spot for gravity blankets, shall we? While we have 287 of my closest friends, 288 of my closest friends watching right now. I'll get back to the football talk in a second. I want to thank the sponsor. As this goes along, this gets heavier. It's a gravity blanket. It's just it's a blanket, but it's heavy. It's got beanbags in it. It's great for stress relief. It's great for insomnia. The notion, I won't give you the whole spiel again because people mostly who are here, I did it earlier. But if you do have sleep troubles, if you have problems unwinding, the pressure point stuff is real. I mean, I didn't really think it was, but there's actual scientific evidence that gravity blankets has commissioned that indicates that people actually do sleep better with it, because it is kind of like being swaddled. That's why we swaddle babies, because it hits pressure points and it actually biologically, physically relaxes you. As you saw in the chat, people swear by them. If you or your significant other or your mom or your dad or your brother have a hard time sleeping, it's a good idea. GravityBlankets.com. You can go use the promo code HarrisTube, or is it /HarrisTube? One or the other. And it'll get you 25% off on a gravity blanket. They also have a robe that I wore on last Friday that has like, what did we decide? 3 pounds of weights, 5 pounds of weights, like right here. Also quite relaxing to sit there and kind of feel the weight on your pressure points on your neck and be like, oh, it's pretty nice. I think it's like the only pressure point robe in existence at this point. It's like a brand new product, but support the sponsors if you can. If this applies to you and you have the means and you're interested, it's wonderful if you use our promo codes, because that's how sponsors keep coming back to the channel, and that's how the channel stays happening, because you guys don't pay for it, and you shouldn't pay for this channel, but it's good that we get paid to do it, and that's happens through sponsors. So we thank Gravity Blankets for sponsoring. Lou asks, is there a place in DraftKings where you can track where you are in the 4-week contest? There is not. We're doing that sort of behind the scenes as we go. DraftKings basically sends me and Dave Hewitt a spreadsheet of the current standings. So Lou, I mean, if you want to email me, if you think you're close and you want to know, I can let you know, because Dave Hewitt will have that tally. I think I still have it too, but generally speaking, no. Generally speaking, Dave will on the YouTube channel every week, he'll put like the top 10. He'll put a graphic up of where the top 10 is. But if you're not in the top 10, you won't see your name, obviously. Brad has a question, real world question. Can the Browns win 2 playoff games this year? I mean, can. If they're in the Chiefs bracket, I don't feel great about it, but hold on. Stand by. I didn't love the defensive call when it was 4th down at the end there, and Lamar Jackson came back in from his trots to the locker room. What? I said trot. I didn't love the 0 blitz. It feels like that's exactly what Greg Williams got fired over, and because we like Cleveland, we're forgiving that maybe. Hate the call. I especially hate that you put the pressure all up the middle and not on the outside, and let Lamar Jackson escape and then make the big play to Marquise Brown. And it's only one play, but It's coaching, and I think coaching is a major part of winning playoff games. And it felt like that was an example of maybe the Browns not being there, just not being ready yet. So, the AFC's got some good teams, but one great team. So the Browns, we'll have to play the first weekend, and they'll have to play a pretty good team. And then if they get to the second weekend and it's not the Chiefs, they'll have to play a pretty good team. Like it's going to be Steelers, Bills, Titans, Ravens. It'll be somebody decent. Two of those, right? It'd be decent. They could win. If this is really Mayfield, then they've got a good chance. But I mean, if you've watched Brown games, my God, it hasn't been Mayfield. So even Mitch Trubisky had two game streaks that were good. So we'll have to see. Kevin says, what's your confidence level in the dog sausage versus Detroit? That would be Ryan Tannehill. Is his upside capped if he faces Chase Daniel, also known as Chase Volume Daniel? Of course, we don't know game flow. We can't know. We don't really. We do know that when Tennessee can get away with it, they'll often just run, and they certainly did last week. And Tannehill paid off a little bit, but even in a blowout, you're going to get much more Henry. And so if it winds up being a Chase Daniel / volume related game, then you are risking the Tannehill thing. He has a 17 attempt game in him. Of course he does, because we've seen it several times. Fortunately, often those are touchdown passes to A.J. Brown, so that's good. But not crazy confident, not terrible against. He needs to be in a close game, or he needs to score early. If you're asking a single position question, go to Harris Football. So running back. I'm not going to answer it here, but all you have to just go is harrisfootball.com and you'll see my ranks and you'll have my answer. Andy says, did cousin Josh make the playoffs in any leagues this year? So I'm sure he made the playoffs in his home league, but I don't know how this past week went. So I'm not sure he's still alive. He is alive in the conference finals of the Fishbowl. I am not. I lost in the conference semifinals. The way the Fishbowl works in the playoffs is not head to head. It's just ranking total points, because you'll be up against 4 other teams that have Derrick Henry, right? So it's the top 10 point scorers in a group advance to the next week. And I just had a bad week, or medium week. It was okay. I had Rashard Higgins. That was a good call, but I know he's alive in the Fishbowl. J-Rod says, I was thinking about what you were saying about Dobbins. Are we just going to always be underwhelmed with J.K. Dobbins because of Lamar Jackson? Was hoping 2019 Mark Ingram was his future. Sure, a running back can be good when Lamar Jackson is good, and the reason I know is because we saw it last year. So, I can't predict situation for you in the future. I can't predict it. I'm in August and I can't predict it, and we're always wrong about situation, like as the season's starting, let alone in December, 9 months before the season starting. But I know it can happen, and it requires a commitment to the bit. It requires 2 running backs there, and Gus Edwards being a pretty ancillary piece, and J.K. Dobbins being really good. And I think Dobbins is good, but the rest of it, and then the offensive line mashing people, and they've lost guys on that offensive line, and then they've had guys injured, and it just hasn't been the same. And that's part of what the problem is with the Ravens offense. Part of it is clear as a passer. He is a real problem as a passer. And part of it is the line is just not as dominant as it was last year. As a top 2 or 3 offensive line last year, is just not anymore. They have problems up the middle. They get a lot of heat right direct up the middle right away. But it can still happen for sure. If you're asking a wide receiver question, then go over to Harris Football and you'll see my wide receiver ranks. Let's see what we got. John Boy says, is Dallas Goddard's film looking good so far? His numbers are great, but I thought they would be better. He still looks like the truth to me on film. Dallas Goddard looks like a stud. There's a chance the Eagles will try to get out of that Zach Ertz money that he's owed. He's asking for more money before he got hurt, and that's not going to happen. So part of the problem is that when you have two tight ends as your two best receivers, it's tough for one of them to shine. Obviously, Ertz missed a bunch of time after that happened, and Goddard numbers got better. We're just gonna have to find our way around to realizing that not much of what happened with the Eagles this year matters at all going forward. It's just a total disaster. The entire offensive line got hurt. Every receiver got hurt. And we can have an argument about the quarterback. I don't think he's a bum, but he may be out, right? It's possible they'll go to Hurts. My guess is no. My guess is that it'll still be Wentz, and that everyone will be like, wow, he found himself again, if they can fix the other problems. But you just don't see a functional offense when you watch Eagle games, because there's pressure no matter what. There's no holes for Miles Sanders to run through. And I'm not the biggest Miles Sanders fan. I'm not a big apologist, but he can't do anything when there's nowhere to run. And the same would be true of the quarterback. Just missed assignments and guys in the quarterback's face immediately. I don't think there's a good way to evaluate anything. And so to get it back to Goddard, it's like, I totally hear what you're saying, because you want this elite tight end. Can't you beat Travis Kelce? Can't you win me leagues? And he's obviously not doing that. So it's to some degree a bummer, but I just think it's asking a lot. It's not a functional offense right now. Let me take a sip. Cantili, I hope I'm saying that right. Cantili says, would you still rank Deshaun Watson above the waiver wire quarterbacks if Cooks is out again? He faces the Colts away this week. First of all, I'll say he just faced the Colts, right, a couple weeks ago, and he was good. He also had shots. He had Jordan Akins for a touchdown, and Akins had the sun in his eyes, and he dropped it. Watson himself scored a touchdown. I got overturned on review. He has a pretty safe floor almost no matter what. This outing looks worse than it probably deserved to look, but it was still bad. The point is, though, that as long as a good quarterback keeps playing, usually even if it's garbage time, you get something. And then this one, you just flat out didn't. I will have to make that decision, and I promise I will update the ranks as if and when Cooks doesn't play. I think to this point they expect him to play. I think it comes back to that same question that I'm always asking all of you to kind of put yourself in that mindset of which is going to make you matter. If you sit him for Jalen Hurts and he has a 40-point game, or if you play him and he has a 12-point game. That's either one is possible. I tend to think Deshaun Watson doesn't usually give you 12-point games, and so I tend to still rank him in the top 10, even though it isn't. You're right. The Colts aren't a great matchup, although he's played them a lot of times and he knows how to do it, and they should have won that game when they played the Colts. Like, he fumbled on the goal line or else they win that game. If you just don't want to put up with it, if you just have a feeling like I just don't want to do this, that has to be the call that says, I know myself well enough to know what's going to make me the maddest. That's what you have to kind of ask yourself. Midgeman says, situation aside, which player do you think is better, Hunter Henry or Dallas Goddard? I'm going to say Goddard now. Henry has the torn ACL. I'm not sure he's quite the super freak that I thought I saw right at the beginning. I still think he's good. I'm not sure. I think he's, I think Mark Andrews is good, but I think he benefits from being the only thing that works in that passing offense. I would value Mark Andrews more because of situation, but if I were just evaluating them as players, I would say Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews, same neighborhood. And I would probably, as players, put Dallas Goedert a little bit higher than that. And maybe with Hunter, it's an easy excuse for me to say it's all just been injuries. He's been hurt so much, and maybe it's not fair. Maybe he's just as fast as he's always been. He certainly looks like he has the quarterback. That's good. So the situation looks pretty good. But that's my answer. Pretendica says, click the like button, chat. Yeah, we've got 289 people here and only 230 likes. Do the rest of you not like this video? I mean, that's actually possible. I've seen myself. I actually could believe that 69 people did not like the 69. Nice. But yeah, click the like button. Come on, click the like button, chat. Come on. Let's see. What do we got? Patrick says, is Cole Beasley a safe start? Well, I think we just saw he's not, because we just saw him not do too much, and Gabriel Davis performed pretty well. Plus, John Brown, I guess, has a chance to come back. He's been activated from, to give him that window of a few weeks where they can activate him or put him on season-ending IR. John Brown being back gives a real squeeze to Cole Beasley and to Gabriel Davis. If John Brown isn't there, I ranked him where I ranked him. Beasley, you can see where he is. I can't remember, 30s-ish among receivers. It looked great there for a couple of games, and then this one, they didn't really use him very much. I think I might have even said this in the podcast. I can't remember, but when I was talking to Jim, it feels like usually the arrangement is Stefan Diggs gets man coverage with safety help, and you really have to work to get him the ball. And therefore, often the Cole Beasley stuff is just sort of open underneath, and that becomes the path of least resistance, and you get a lot of that. And in the Steeler game, you got a lot of zone against Stefan Diggs, and man, good luck. So that possession stuff that Cole Beasley had been getting all went to Stefan Diggs, and he winds up giving this massive game. Couple of downfield throws, but really, if you watched it, it was mostly intermediate stuff where he's really kind of wide open, and they're planning on tackling him, and that doesn't always work out. Tough to know what the plan is, tough to know what the Broncos will do. My tendency is that defenses in general have concentrated a little bit more on Diggs and made it harder to just keep pumping him the ball. But John Brown returning feels like that could end that conversation. We got up to 259 likes. That's pretty good. But we have 288 people here. Just feels like we could get more likes. Feels like we could. I'm just saying we could, right? We could maybe get some more likes. If you don't know where the like button is and you're watching on mobile, just close your chat and then you'll see it, and then you can come right back to the chat. But, we should at least be able to get to 280, shouldn't we? 280 likes? I'm almost positive we can get to 280. Almost positive. We're to 270 already. So my instincts were dead on. 270 is where we are. 277. Oh, we're going to get to 280. 278. Many of you have already liked it. I appreciate that. But I think we can get to 279. There's one more person, come on, who hasn't liked it. There's one more person. Maybe there isn't. 286. Look at that. Let's see. I don't even know what that question means, so I'm sorry I can't answer it. Coyle says, where do you think Stefan Diggs goes in 2021? Great question. I think it has to be second round. I thought about him. He was on my long list for the first round, but he wasn't ever going to get quite to there. But, you want to be careful not to overreact to the great year when you were right. I had Diggs higher than the market, and I had him everywhere, and that felt great. But you want to be careful to just go, I think the right thing to say is keep him about where you had him. Move him up some. I had him third round. He probably belongs second. But I think the key thing is not to go totally crazy based on production. Your ranks should be largely based on what you think the player is, and I've always loved Diggs, and then partly informed by situation, but not too much, because we're wrong about situations so much. Let's look back at the situations we got wrong and based all of our draft strategies on, right? Bills are going to run. Of course they're a running team. God, of course they are. Are you kidding me? Josh Allen stinks, right? We're just wrong about this stuff all the time. So I'm going to want to focus on what Diggs can do, which is be excellent, but not be an elite deep threat and not be an elite end zone threat, but he's excellent. And know that there's a really good quarterback there, and that matters. Now, I think we are all convinced that Josh Allen's pretty good, and so that matters. But let's not go crazy with situations. So second round probably feels about right to me. But man, as we talk, haven't I nominated 18 people for the second round? It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of potential, really high upside league winners. I feel way better about what's going to be available at running back in the second round than people taking Kenyon Drake this year. I just didn't want any freaking part of it. Miles Sanders first round, Clyde Edwards-Helaire first round, in some leagues they were second, but I didn't feel good about that. And I have a feeling I'm going to feel a lot better as I go further down the draft board this coming next year. Armando says, any Josh Jacobs encouragement? I would say use Josh Jacobs. He's really, really good. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but he's really good. I would keep using him. Gregory says, does Andy Barron still dislike Aaron Rodgers? Oh, poor Andy. To be fair, we've hashed it out again since he's been on the show. And he said, listen, I never really trashed the player. I just hated the system. Other guests on the show, who I'm not going to call out by yelling at them now, they definitely said, I think he's done. I think he's completely cooked. I don't understand why he's going QB 11. He should be QB 17. Not going to name names. Ethan says, whose jerseys do you own? I'm not a big jersey guy. I have a Tom Brady jersey because it was gifted to me. My parents gave it to me because, we're big Patriots fans. So it's fun and exciting that they won a Super Bowl. That was from a long time ago. I have a Boston Bruins blank jersey, like a hockey sweater, big Bruins fan. I don't really have other jerseys. Not so much a jersey guy. Justin says, what's the deal with Chris Godwin this year? Is Brady just ignoring him? No, I mean, he's not ignoring him, and Godwin's obviously had some good games, but I think the deal has been, this is my little Buccaneers rant. Fix your hats, fix your Cornell hat, fix your whatever hat you got, because I'm about to give my rant again. Bruce Arians isn't a good coach. He's proved to me this year that he's just not a particularly good coach, because I don't know how, we talked about it all summer. This is such a brilliant move for Tampa Bay because the Jameis Winston offense, no risk it, no biscuit, only really works when you have Patrick Mahomes. It's really not what the league is anymore. Isolation routes, throwing the ball 30 yards down the field. It's really not what the league is anymore. That's not how, Patrick Mahomes can win anywhere he wants. But does Patrick Mahomes really make his money down the field? He makes his money by being a genius in the intermediate passing game, by just being a genius generally. Having Tom Brady come in, we were all like, well, cool. They're gonna change the playbook, and they're gonna play possession receiver stuff to Brady's strengths, and that screams Chris Godwin because he's much more a technician, and he's much more get open at the top of a route, know where to go on an option route, all that stuff. And instead, they've kept the same playbook, and Tom Brady has the most attempts of 30-plus air yards in the entire league, which is, what's the word? I think I said it on the podcast, stupid. It just doesn't make any sense, and Brady predictably has been kind of bad on those throws, and I'm not absolving him of responsibility for making bad decisions. Like, you don't, just because the play call wasn't perfect for you doesn't mean you have to throw it to the wrong guy. So he has some blame for the state of the Tampa offense, but to me, the playbook is just off and not accentuating what Godwin does. So, Godwin's a good player, and Godwin's a free agent, unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. Interesting. I know as a Patriots fan, I wouldn't mind getting him. I think he's turned out to be a pretty darn good receiver. I think he's kind of like an AJ Brown type, like a Deebo Samuel type, like a maybe not going to blow you away with. They're really good athletes, but not speed athletes. Much more like, I cannot tackle you after you catch the ball type athletes. That's really where Godwin got lots of his work with Winston last year. He'd get the check down and he'd run, and that hasn't really happened. They haven't checked it down that much. Coyle says, roast Andy, please. Andy's one of my very good friends. Lucas says, who's the Harris signature sleeper tight end? Guaranteed to be a 2021 star. Asked completely with Lucas's tongue in his cheek. Of course, I don't have one yet, but Goddard is the one that I'm hoping. He feels like the one who can be that sort of breakout George Kittle, Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce kind of like unguardable dude. He's going to need some help. He's going to need either Jalen Hurts to be good or the whole offense to be fixed or whatever, but he's still my dude. Ethan says, when are you bringing the beard back? There's a lot more gray in the beard than there used to be. There used to be some. Now there's a little more. I'm not sure if I want to go there. And plus, Ethan, it takes, I don't know, 6 months. I'm not the most masculine fellow, as it turns out. Liquid Demons says Carson Wentz might do well with a change of scenery. And I said this to Jim on the show. If the Eagles want to bite the bullet and cut him, I would line up the Patriots to sign Carson Wentz, and I would give him a nice size contract. I'm not saying I'm 100% convinced. Nobody really knows for sure, but I'm sorry. I know how much Eagles fans are convinced. I know how much Jim is convinced that it's Wentz and that he's bad. I just think the surrounding cast has been the biggest disaster these last 2 years, in any 2-year span of anything I can ever remember, of having the line get completely hurt both years, of having the receivers get completely hurt both years. I've never seen anything like it that I remember. Let's see. Drew says, with the Dolphins being Patriots light, are you worried that they're not going to put enough talent around Tua? Because that kind of seemed to be like the late stage mode of the Patriots. They would just refuse to draft good receivers, refuse to sign good receivers. We can get by with Mohamed Sanu, all that stuff. I mean, I'll say no, but I'll also say if Tua is going to be like a championship level pro, we certainly don't know that yet. He's got a lot to prove. I love the path that he's on. But if he is going to get to that point, it's not going to be with Brady-esque play, right? It's going to be more with Russell Wilson-esque play. Like the Kyler Murrays and the Tuas and I'll say Lamar Jackson, even though I don't trust that Lamar Jackson will ever get to this point, but that sort of genre of quarterback was in modern times. There have been other Randall Cunningham. There's been other running quarterbacks for 40 years, but for more than that. But in this time when the pass has become so much more important in the league, the model that they have to follow is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's won a championship, has been to multiple Super Bowls, absolutely like pinnacle, grade A. Nobody would ever doubt that he's a championship level quarterback, but he probably doesn't do it without better weapons than Brady had a couple of times when he won championships. Like probably not, because he's not going to be that all-world accurate, not going to be that like the greatest reader of defenses in the history of the sport, all that stuff. So I think probably if you're thinking of Tua having that path, you're going to need a cast. And I doubt that they'll be like, cool. We'll just pocket the cap money or, cool. We'll just sign Jacoby Myers. Like, I think the Patriots have dramatically guessed wrong on some skill weapons that really screwed them. Sony Michel is a first-round pick. N'Keal Harry is a first-round pick. If those guys had worked out, we wouldn't say that they surrounded Brady with no talent. We'd have been like, way to go. What an offense. And instead, both of those guys have pretty much flopped, especially as first-rounders. And, now we go, well, look at the Patriots. They're so dumb. They didn't surround them they tried to spend first-round picks. They just did it incompetently. So I wouldn't think that's really the plan there. Chad says, bold prediction, we'll see Trubisky in Tampa Bay next year. Maybe. David said, you think Sean McVay is about to break all of our hearts this week? And I know what that's about. That's about Cam Akers. Of course, I have no more information than you do. No idea at all. The Jets certainly are more formidable as a run defense than they are as a pass defense. So there's been a lot of work done against them via the air. That's for sure. Seattle just pounded that a little further last week. So it's a really good matchup for Jared Goff. But of course there is the Ryan Tannehill risk of what if it's 40-0, he might not even be in the game. Like I'll say I would probably use Cam Akers. You can see where I have him ranked. It's as a starter, but I have no more information than you do. Jamie says, who are your favorite authors or those who inspire you the most? I happen to have a book right here that I really like that I just reread recently. I would recommend that one. It's very funny and very good. Don DeLillo, one of my favorites for sure. I'll say, I like David Foster Wallace. I like Doris Lessing. I like JD Salinger. I like Thomas Pynchon. I like lots and lots of writers. Nabokov. I'll say, or Nabokov, I guess. I just mispronounced his name. But I do have a top 10 novels of all time podcast that I did like in 2016 that if you tweet me or email me, hey, Harris@harrisfootball.com, I will send you a link to that podcast. You can download and listen. Let's see. Brad says JD Salinger is the turkey mayo of authors. There we disagree. I think he's very good. Chad says, have you read any Danielewski? I have. I reread House of Leaves this past winter. It was the second time, obviously, that I read it. I read it like 5 or 6 years ago and really liked it. And I probably liked it a little less on this reread, just because I was less surprised. I knew, kind of remember vaguely what was coming. I remember the first time I read it, I was like, my mind was blown. I thought it was awesome. It's obviously like the most metafictional thing. The problem I have is that everything since then, I tried only Revolutions and couldn't really make any sense of it. And everything since then feels like it's been kind of up its own tush. Dave says Herman Hesse is my homeboy. I like Herman Hesse. Fine. I've read lots of Herman Hesse. The Celine says, if McCaffrey plays, will he be ranked? Yeah, if McCaffrey plays, you should start him, but I don't think he's playing. Jonathan says, did you ever check out Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake? You know, I tried it. I've read lots of Margaret Atwood, and I tried Oryx and Crake because lots of people love it. I've never got through it. I couldn't get through it. It's not so much my genre, but I realize it winds up bending the genre, and maybe I just didn't get into the part of it that it bent it. So enough people have told me that it's great that I feel like it's much more the weakness is mine, but I never have gotten through it. Let's see. Ethan says, what are your thoughts on Taylor Swift's newest album, LOL? I'm glad you LOL'd because I have no idea. I don't know any Taylor Swift songs, but music did come up, so I'll strum a little. The Celine says, thank you for answering my question. Now I'm going to buy the couch, blanket, and boots from your site. That's great. Today, we're just talking about the blanket. Lou says, who got taught the greater lesson, Deontay or Tomlin? I take your meaning, like, don't bench your best receiver because you'll lose. Probably for the long term, it was smarter to bench him then, even though obviously it wound up costing them the number one seed in the AFC. But I probably would have done it too. As much as it made me sad, I probably would have done it too. Miller Time says, what are your thoughts on James Robinson's value in Dynasty? I'm not like super bullish. I would trade him if someone wanted to give me like a legitimately great multi-year player. I think he's good. He's a good story. He's slower Chris Carson, and Chris Carson's not super fast. He's fine, but he's the only thing that works. And so you want a team in the future that drafts maybe Trevor Lawrence or another quarterback who starts, they have a pretty good offensive line, like has DJ Chark's pretty good, like starts diversifying the offense. You want a team to not have to rely on the good power back, good solid power back, but probably overdrafted next year. If people are thinking of him like, hey, why is he not a first round pick? Like, I'm not going to be there. So I'm probably a little more bearish than bullish, but it's a really good story. Robert says, what do you think Austin Eckler's value will be next year? I think it'll probably be, I keep saying in a PPR second round, but maybe not quite that in a non-PPR. I just don't think it's really super smart to give a player like Eckler the Christian McCaffrey treatment. I just think they get hurt. And of course it's, you can't draw a straight line and said, because Austin Eckler got a big contract and put a ton of extra weight on, that's why he hurt his hamstring so badly. He had to lose two months. But I'm not saying, I'm just saying, like, I'm not shocked that he got hurt. I'll put it that way. Let's see. Small bones, says Seth. Indeed. Graham says, if Kenny G plays, how high would you rank him? I haven't had to cross that bridge yet. I would want to start him, but not if it's Chase Daniel. It seems like just the moment Matt Stafford gets hurt, you got to think about using Kenny Golladay. Blah. J-Rod says, how much is Denny going to make memes when TY is a league winner? Was Denny on specifically TY or just any receiver? See, it feels to me like when you're zero RB, you get to gloat even when you're not actually on the player. And I'm not sure if that's the case with TY and Denny. Maybe he's been screaming about TY all year, like, keep sticking with him. If he has, amazing call. But like, just because some receiver was a league winner, well, yeah, sometimes that happens. That doesn't mean never draft running backs. Like, philosophically, I've said this before. I wonder how much of it is tongue in cheek. I don't know. Diego says, do you know Free Fallin'? Yeah, Diego, I do. So if you have a single position question, I just see so many of them. All you have to do is go to harrisfootball.com. If you're wondering how high I am on Cam Akers, all you have to do is go look at the ranks. I have a website. I update them regularly. John says, no stairway allowed. Oh, yeah? Yeah. Dave says we need a live streamed Denny Harris Wii golf match. I don't have a Wii, but I do have a PlayStation 4 and I have a golf game for it. Just get Denny on that. I'm in. I am so in. Robert says, if you couldn't get rid of team defense as a position in fantasy, but could change the scoring to be better, what would you do? Shouldn't have picked a question I don't have a good answer to. I don't know. I don't think there's a way to fix it. I don't think defense matters very much right now in fantasy. There's just not a good way to differentiate. Everybody gives up points. Make sacks be worth a ton, but sacks are a little more predictable when you have a good pass rush. Make like turnovers be worth much less. Like make turnovers and pick sixes, take them completely out. Take special teams completely out. Like all the things that you just can't predict at all. It's just, what's the point? I just think it's tough. I do. I think it's tough. Tucker says, what is Tua's ceiling as a prospect? I think it's Russell Wilson. I think he's got a huge high ceiling. Obviously, at this point, they're babying him a little bit, and he doesn't have a really good offensive line, and he's without weapons, and he doesn't have any running backs. Like, it's a pretty conservative game plan. But I mean, once again, against Arizona and against Kansas City, when you saw when they needed it, he delivered. He was really good in that second half. He was a little shaky in that first half. He really was. But he was really good in the second half. Andrew says, are you and Cousin Josh going to have a top 10 movie list this year? I think the answer to that is probably no. Considering I've seen about 3 movies. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to take a year off from that one. I did just see Tenet. I mentioned on the live stream on Sunday morning. Man, this is not good. Not good. Hey, White Rhino, I saw your comment before. I'm probably not going to answer your question, just so you know. John says, do you use headphones or speakers to listen to music? I don't have speakers here in California. I have speakers back in Massachusetts, but yeah, it's pretty much all headphones. Eric says, is flexing Jonathan Taylor over Julio Jones too cute? It's a keeper league, so this is a legit question. Well, I think it would be a legit question even if it wasn't a keeper league. To some degree, it might just be easier if you had the decision taken out of your hands if Julio didn't play again. I could see my way through to play Taylor. I could because Julio's played twice when he's been questionable with the hamstring, right? And White Rhino, I just wanted to say to you, bye. It's so cool when people come on live streams and decide to act like turds. It's awesome. The 2 games when Julio's played when he's been unhealthy, right, with the hamstring. God, like one of them he totally gave us the shaft, and one of them 200 yards. But 50% is not great, and Taylor has an unbelievable matchup, and he's red hot, and it feels like I could find my way through to do Taylor, but obviously, Julio can. I probably personally would be able to deal with it better if Julio went off on my bench than Taylor going off on my bench, because I understand what the risk factors are with Julio. They're horrible, right? But it's a good question. Daniel says, is David Montgomery just getting lucky, or is his production lately legitimate? It's probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, I think like Miles Sanders, David Montgomery has been the biggest factor is like held hostage by situation. Terrible situation, held hostage. But he himself has proven time after time. And, I said this on the podcast, like Twitter realized when they saw all those games early in middle season that David Montgomery really was slow and didn't have any change of direction and looked like he ran with a piano on his back. And then he has a couple of good games and, makes a couple of big plays. And it's like, we're going to forget all that. So I think you ride him for now and you feel great about it. I'm not freaked out by the Vikings matchup, but it's not as good as the last 2. I think you use him. Long term, I think he's okay. I think he's Jordan Howard. I think he's okay. Like, you always want to chase volume, and if they're going to commit to him as like a pure get a 300 touch kind of season, he's going to have value. But I just don't think they should, because I think he's okay. He's a little better than Jordan Howard, because Jordan Howard never really had any long speed, and Montgomery, they didn't catch him right on the long one against Detroit. They didn't catch him, so it's not a fair comparison. But I don't think he's special. Casanova says, do you trust Justin Herbert this week? I ranked him in the sort of lower levels of QB1. You can see at harrisfootball.com where I have him ranked. Trusting is a hard thing to know. I don't really have information that you don't have about how this game Thursday night's going to go. The Raider defense isn't very good. The Raider run defense is really bad. I feel like mostly I would probably use him, but I understand where the question's coming from, because of course it's gross. Like, he hasn't been balling downfield the way against the Falcons. They clearly were scared of that pass rush. That was a lot of short passing. And it worked, but it didn't rack up big stats for Herbert the way he had previously thrown the ball down the field like a swashbuckler. They're really having problems on that offensive line. But I mean, you can see where I have him ranked on the ranks, and you can see relative to other quarterbacks you might be considering. Can we have a Ravens running back blues riff? Okay. Do I know how to play a blues riff? How do I play a blues riff? That's all for the Ravens. That was J.K. Dobbins' rag. Brett asked the Deonte Johnson question again, and Brett, you missed the beginning, obviously, because I talked about it an awful lot. But you know, I would say my takeaway is, of course, he has way more downside than we ever thought he did, because he drops one pass against the Bengals and he could be riding the bench. So of course, I understand. I just think, you know, my ranks are what my ranks say, but they're not really linear. So, you know, you're comparing him to Hilton, and somebody else might be comparing Deonte Johnson to somebody else. And I obviously just I have no more information than you do. I don't know anything else that you don't know. I saw it happen, and it felt to me like he deserved to get benched. I mean, it felt to me like that was pretty rough, and the kid needs to learn. And he came back in the second half and didn't get used a ton, but at least he didn't drop any more balls. He's a supreme talent, and maybe they go 10 catches, 180 yards, 3 touchdowns to kind of make him realize that he's good if he catches the ball. But I don't know that. So I think the question we're always asking ourselves is, if we're close on 2 guys, is like, which one is going to piss me off more if I miss it or if I guess wrong? You know, I think that's really the only thing you can do, because nobody has any more information. I don't have a magic way to tell you, I'm positive Mike Tomlin no longer holds a grudge and there will be no more repercussions. Like, it's definitely, you're right to be thinking about it, because it's definitely a factor. No question about it. Robert says, are you like Jack Benny and his violin? That's an old reference, but I got it. Jack Benny, little violin. Eventually he played it, right? I think. I don't know. Timothy says, what's in your cup? This is vodka. This is possum water vodka. Not really. Curtis says, you're a natural with the guitar, just like Dewey Cox. I got that reference. Liquid Demon says, you should start a band. Brian says, who in the echo chamber, without naming names, do you think is the worst? Well, how can I tell you if I don't name names? That seems impossible. The band, says Dave, should be called Harris and the Crutches. Alex says, have I heard of the band Goose? I have not. Jonathan says, you know, half of us would buy possum water vodka, maybe more. Hey, I mean, I keep telling him, market it to the podcast. He doesn't want to buy an ad in the podcast. I'd sell it to him, but he doesn't want to. Chad says, pro or anti LaCroix. So I don't buy it. I'm not like fundamentally opposed to the notion of like sparkling water. I just drink water out of the fridge. Like, I have like a, you know, the yacht is equipped with a fridge where you can, you know. Brian says, no, just slyly tell us, you know, who's the worst for the echo chamber? It's that person. Oh, you know the one I mean. Nate says, what do you miss about Massachusetts? Snow? Definitely not. I mean, I haven't seen my parents in 18 months, because normally I would have seen them over the summer, and I didn't go back. So that's mostly what I miss. But yeah, I mean, I have friends there that when the weather's nice, I like to hang out and play music and, you know, go golfing and play softball and stuff, and didn't get to do any of that this summer. Thank you, Alex. I will do that. Celine says, Harris and the Amherst Yacht Possums. Or how about Harris and the Amherst Lawnmower Possums? We just get as many references as we can into the band name. Ilya says, what's the most LA thing you do these days? Oh, God. That would be absolutely nothing. I could be living in a simulacrum. I could be Desmond from Lost. I have no idea. I never leave the apartment. I don't do much. Grant says, how long does it take to watch or take notes on a single game of film? Thank you for your hard work. Probably, I would say about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes per, if I'm doing it right. I mean, later in the season, sometimes I'm just like, because I'm fast forwarding in between plays. I'm just trying to go from play to play. I don't really care what the announcers are saying or anything. Very rare that I'll hear any of that commentary. Unless it's like a big play and it's a good announcer and I'm interested to see what they said. But yeah, probably an hour and 15 to make all the notes that I need to talk about them on the show, something like that. William says, cheers from Maine. Hello. Dave says, a podcast is the most LA thing Chris does these days. Or how about a YouTube show with you, Dave? Jerk. Chad says, real question. Do you struggle this year, especially when your real team isn't doing well despite how your fantasy season is going? We never really get to hear that fandom from you because the Patriots are much worse this year. What I discovered this year is that I am a spoiled Patriots fan who can get over it pretty quick. Like, I wanted them to be good because it would have been fun if they had stayed good. And then in September, they had that really tough loss, but good game. And Newton played well in Seattle. And I was kind of into it. I was like, all right, we're going to have a season. And then everything turned to crap. And obviously something's wrong with Newton. I mean, he's an utter disaster. But what I learned is that it just didn't bother me nearly as much as like, if other sports teams that I like, it just, you've been drinking with the golden chalice for 20 years. So like, I'm okay. That's what I discovered, is that it didn't really bother me that much. I would watch the games and I'd be like, come on, do a thing, be good, do something better. And then I would just forget it. It wouldn't stick with me the way it did previous years. And that just comes from being a Patriots fan and being hopefully being like a reasonable Patriots fan, not a honk, where you just recognize you had it really good and it was so fun for so long, for a big chunk of our lives. And like, yeah, I can deal. Liquid Demon says, I wish you could turn off the announcers on some games. Yeah, truly. That is true. Gregory says the open from Mitch on the podcast each week is amazing. He forgot to do it this past week. I nailed him. My goal is always to like vex him and say something like he's not expecting, throw him a curveball so that he answers the question. Then he forgets to say his line. So I'm with it. Michael says, what does Kamara do that Eckler doesn't? Kamara is smaller, same with CMC, but remains in the first round. See, I mean, Eckler's smaller. Eckler is shorter anyway. And we can make the argument that now Eckler like did his crazy workouts on Instagram. And so now maybe he weighs more, but I would argue that often when you put on weight like that, it leads to, what happened to him. I can't prove it, but I'll say, Christian McCaffrey is bigger than his frame would normally want him to be. And he can't get his quad healthy and he can't get his, soft tissue injuries. And the same with Eckler. What Kamara does is he's an absolutely elite accelerator. It's crazy. He just has that way of kind of crouching down low. He's the opposite of an upright runner. So he just doesn't take that much direct contact relative to other people at the position. And he's just an absolute, you give him a crease and he is an absolute elite accelerator. And McCaffrey's a really good accelerator. He's not quite Kamara. And Eckler is, I don't think, quite either of those guys when it comes to that. Eckler is also an elite change of direction guy. McCaffrey's more elite as a change of direction guy. And Eckler's fine. But Eckler honestly doesn't run with much power. I mean, Kamara gets more power going than Eckler does. So I do think there's a difference. And so, it's my opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right. And definitely doesn't mean you have to agree with it. That's for sure. Durant says, I seem to make it in time for the concerts. I haven't concerted. I played like 2 songs. I haven't concerted. B says, when will you be selling possum bongs on your merch page? Asking for a friend in the NBA. We got to get them, like, because any merch that we have on the website is stuff that you can get like made on demand, because I'm not interested in like buying 100 shirts and then having to sell them like and mail them and stuff. I'm not going to do that. So if you can find a company that probably not, but let's just say if you can find a company that like on demand prints up custom bongs with like possum faces printed on them, then let me know. Sebastian says Fletcher Hilling, Zeke or Cooper Kupp in standard. Boy, I just play Cooper Kupp. You have an option. I would just not go there with Zeke again. I don't know what's going to happen any better than you do, but I just feel like now I'm banging my head against the wall and feels easy to just go Kupp. Ilya says, is Tony Pollard a top 10 starter in the NFL if given the chance? I don't think I know. It's really hard to tell when they don't play very much. He's looked more like he's had a little more gas on occasion than Zeke. It's also easier to do that when you know you're only going to touch it a few times. It's also easier to do that if you're playing on downs when the defense is backing off a little bit. Like it just isn't fair because it's not really apples to apples. When Zeke is in there, especially with no Dak Prescott, the defense is going, let's stop that guy. And when Pollard's in there, it's maybe not quite the focal point. So I'm not ready to go there yet, but he's better than I expected he would be. So we'll see if we get a chance at some point. I don't think I know. Coyle is asking for Tuesday's Gone. I just don't know it. I don't really even know how. I know how the chorus goes, and I know how the da 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 da, but I don't know how the verse goes. Like I wouldn't even know how to sing it. Sorry about that. Lou says, what was the first song you learned on the guitar? I believe it was... I believe that was it. Dave says, which Harris football employed Dave would win in the octagon? That's a good question. I think Dave Hewitt, if you're still here, you have to answer that. I don't know. I'm not sure. Dylan says, is Lynn Bowden at flex too risky in PPR? He had it. Let's see who's out for the Dolphins. I would say if like everybody's still out, he has a floor. There's no question. I'm not sure what kind of upside he really has. I don't think they're going to give him all that many traditional running back looks. That was pretty much DeAndre Washington. But there's a chance he 6, 7, 8 targets. There's a chance for that number of catches, like short little stuff. I don't think he's going to make a lot of plays down the field. He's pretty unexciting ceiling wise, but he might, if everybody's out, he might have a floor. It's possible. Sebastian says, why is Herbert ranked so low in your ranks when someone else was telling me, why is he so high? I didn't remember that he was 15, to be honest, Sebastian. On the one hand, it's like, it's weird to have to defend the rank from two directions. Like on the was, he's been good all year. And on the other hand, he's been cold lately. And that offensive line's really having some troubles. And, I think in the end, probably it just depends on who you're comparing him to. And he has lots of upside because if they go back to the game plan where they're really, pushing the ball down the field again, he's going to have more value than I'm ascribing to him, but that's not what they did against the Falcons last week. And I think they'll be able to run. So I guess, he landed where he landed, and I think it reflects feeling unsure, but hopeful that there's some upside there. Dave says that's bait. He's not going to answer. Dave Hewitt is not going to answer the octagon. Graham says, what do you think the lessons learned will be from this season for 2021 in fantasy? Will it even be more RB focused in the first 2 to 3 rounds? I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think if somebody said on Sunday or maybe even on Friday that the lesson that Denny's going to feel great because the 0 RB was justified because so many of them got hurt or got busted, and my thought was, oh my God, are we thinking that the top receivers were good and trustable? Like, how's everybody who drafted Michael Thomas feeling, and everybody who drafted Cortland Sutton and Odell Beckham and all the dudes who? It's real easy to look at the entire wide receiver landscape and pick out the 4 guys who did great, who were taken in the first 3 rounds, and be like, see? But man, it was carnage everywhere. And let's face it, if you had a running back this year who didn't get hurt, it was a huge advantage if he was good. Such a huge advantage. And so many of them got hurt that you just got stuck. So I do think that probably my viewpoint isn't going to change, because that my ranks are always pretty heavy on RB. Maybe the market goes that way, maybe not. I'm not the best predictor of what the market's going to do, because sometimes I think the market is dumb. Justin says, a buddy started sharing your mixtapes with me. Do you have an all-time favorite? I probably couldn't tell you an all-time favorite, but I can tell you that if you go back in the podcast archives, each year I do like a supercut of the show, like a 20-minute supercut of like funny things that got said on the show, and I'll play like the 10 favorite mixtapes of the season underneath. That's a pretty good representation of what I think the best ones have been over the course of these 5 seasons. Number 6 is coming in a week or 2. Like Ugly Baby, the one from Dry Erase Girl, pretty great. That comes to mind. Narrow Man comes to mind, pretty great. But I mean, we are really talking like upwards of, it might even be, it's definitely over 300 songs. It might be 400. So it's hard to pick. It's crazy. How insane is that? It is, Patrick says, is Rashard Higgins Cleveland's wide receiver 1? I mean, probably not. It's probably Jarvis Landry. I would guess. I just have to take care of something. Alrighty. Losing My Division, Jeremiah says, is the best mixtape. I love it. The Celine says, Jonathan Taylor will not be a bust. He will be a top 10 RB. Okay. Dave says, so glad I drafted Tyreek Hill as a good mixtape. It is. I don't play it anymore for, I think, reasons that must be apparent, but that is a great one. That is a great one. The archives has some real gems, says Durant. Alshon Jeffrey's legs to the theme of Thinking Out Loud is a definite favorite. I love it. Eric says, In the Name of Chubb. I love it. Ilya says, is the new horse Donovan Peoples-Jones any good? I love it. No, I don't think he's good yet. I mean, we'll see, but he's not playing enough to really know. Chris, I see that you have a quarterback question. Honestly, just go check out the ranks at harrisfootball.com. If you have a quarterback question, my advice is right there. Jason says, how big is the gap between Higgins and Donovan? This turned into the Donovan Peoples-Jones hour. I don't know enough about Donovan Peoples-Jones. What is he? Has he got 10 catches in his career? It's really tough to say what players are. Maybe we'll look back and say, oh my God, he's amazing. All I know, big body. I thought he was small, and we will see. Matt says, how do you personally manage stress on Sundays from a fantasy football perspective? Most of us have it. How do you stay centered and not get too high or too low? I'll tell you how. Have a dumb podcast that you do 130 episodes of every year. All I'm doing is just trying to hang on by my fingernails. I care about my teams, but not really. I'm mostly just trying to get through it and mostly trying to like get enough information to make a show. So that's what I recommend. Like do a podcast, just for yourself, and you won't care about the games nearly as much, which is, I think otherwise, the way is to just try to keep it in perspective and care, but not care too much. It's a good lesson in kind of life, maturity in general is, caring about sports too much, let alone your fantasy team, is the same thing. Like, it's great to really want your team to win and be bummed when they lose, but like to break furniture and to not be able to, to want to punch somebody, get in a fight, to like be mean to your dog, at some point we all need to grow up, and hopefully that's part of just growing up and realizing it matters and it's important, it's fun, but then it ends and you just get over it and you're sad for a day and then you move on like that, hopefully. J-Rod says, how does Antonio Brown look? Is it lost a step? I mean, it's tough to really know for sure because they're not featuring him and he's not going down the field very much, but I'm not impressed so far. Like, who knows? He didn't have a training camp. He didn't have the first eight weeks of the season. Like, I don't know, but it doesn't look great, I would say. Dave says Stefan Diggity is an all-time best. I agree with that. Ilya says, based on all the hurt players, especially at running back, how can we not draft Derrick Henry first overall next year? He just chugs along. You might wind up being right. I think my position. Oh, you were being sarcastic. Okay, good. I mean, you might still, that if somebody makes that argument, I don't think it's insane because I would have thought it was insane going into this year. But like, yeah, I mean, it's not an opinion that I'm ever going to have, but there's a lot more evidence that's right than there was this time last year for sure. All right, I'm gonna do a song. Give me a song, and I'll do a song, and then it'll be. Casey says Lamar pooped for sure. I love it. Oh, I love it. What did I say? The immaculate defecation. Graham says Knights in White Satin. I don't know it, but I got the reference. I love it. I don't even know Pirate Looks at 40. I don't even know what that is, so I certainly couldn't sing it. Counting Crows, Matt says. I did a Counting Crows previously, but I'll do the other one. I know 2 Counting Crows songs. Let me remember how it goes, though. Where would I have put that? All right. Cha la 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 la. Down at the New Amsterdam, staring at this yellow-haired girl, Mr. Jones. Jones took up a conversation with this black-haired flamenco dancer. You know she does. Father plays guitar, suddenly beautiful. I want something beautiful. Man, I wish I was beautiful. So come dance the silence down through the morning. La 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 la. Yeah. Cut up, Maria. Show me some of them Spanish dances and pass me the bottle, Mr. Jones. Believe in me. Help me believe in anything, 'cause I wanna be someone to believe. Yeah, Mr. Jones. I got that wrong, wait. Mr. Jones and me tell each other fairy tales, and we stare at the beautiful women. She's looking at you. Oh, no, she's looking at me, staring in the bright lights, coming through in stereo. But when everybody loves you, you can never be lonely. Okay. Michael says, I'm not stunned Chris isn't a Jimmy Buffett aficionado. Although I do know, I learned for a friend of mine, I learned recently, do I still have it? Nope. I forget how it goes, so never mind. The other Counting Crow song I know. Well, I guess you left me with some feathers in my hand. Yeah, I think I did that one already for you guys previously. I think I know a Jack Johnson song. I think I know. Somebody said a Jack Johnson song. I know she said it's all right. You can make it up next time. I know she knows it's not right. How does that go? There, oh yeah. There ain't no use in lying. Maybe she thinks I know something I don't. Maybe she thinks it's fine. Maybe she knows something I don't. So tired. Tired of trying. Chorus, the only part anybody cares about with this song. It seems to me that maybe pretty much always means no. So don't tell me. You might just let it go. Oftentimes we're lazy. Seems to be in my way. So no one, no, not no one likes to be let down. Somebody asked for Jack Johnson. I thought they did. Keith, I don't know too much Dave Matthews. And JD, much to my chagrin, I don't really know any Crosby, Stills, Steven Sims, Nash and Young. And my buddy Tony, who I do we'll do guitar sessions, and he'll be like, come on, learn more CSN. And I'll be like, oops, I forgot. La Bamba, somebody wants La Bamba. La Bambas, right? I messed that up. Bana balar la bamba. Bana balar la bamba. I know a Blues Traveler song, I think, Chris. I think I knew it once a long time ago, but I think I have the tab here. It's pretty easy, I think. Once upon a midnight dearie, I woke with something in my head. Couldn't escape the memories of the phone call and oh, what you said. Ring call, Christmas Eve, parting gift. I could not put my eyes. I saw through the thoughts of a trusted friend who did to humor me and tell me lies. Did to humor me and tell me lies. Goes on like that for a while. Hotel California. I can do that. No, that's wrong. That's The dude abides. The dude does, in fact, abide. All right. Keith says, Chris, I have to know, is the yacht fully lined with Harris football wallpaper? Absolutely. Are you kidding? Every single wall has this on it. And if it doesn't, I send it back. Absolutely. Ilya says, play the Carrie Underwood Sunday Night Football theme. I unfortunately don't know that one. Lou says, people are leaving. I know, after 2 hours and me playing guitar, I can't believe people would be leaving. But actually, it's probably a good time for me to go have some dinner. Remember, Gravity Blankets sponsored this thing. So if you're here at the end, it would be lovely. If you have a need and if you have the ability, I've got a Gravity Blanket right here. It is heavy. It is quite the pressure point. It helps you relax. Gravityblankets.com and look at Harris Tube as the promo code or the URL. I forgot. But I would love it if you could support the sponsor, because that's how we get to keep doing the show. So we appreciate very much Gravity Blankets sponsoring this live stream. 2 hours of this is probably good. So let me take my leave for now. But I appreciate you all very much. And I hope you win your semifinal matchup. And if you're not in your semifinal matchup, come play DraftKings with us if you want. I'm going to be on the podcast tomorrow, Wednesday morning, with Pat Doherty, and we'll talk about Week 15 ranks. And all of your hats are very awesome. You are awesome for wearing them. I love you all, and I will see you very soon.